Will Palaszczuk and Matt Michaels here with you from the big show on KTGR, where we found out on Monday really, but announced Tuesday morning that Kim Anderson is the 18th men's basketball coach at the University of Missouri. A historic day for the Tigers, and a day, Matt, that talked a lot about coming home.
And that was the theme of the press conference, of the introduction, and Mizzou's milking it for all it's worth, and why not? The true son is back. We know about Kim Anderson's history, of course, coming from Sedalia and then coming from Warrensburg in central Missouri as a coach most recently, and, it was emotional for him. You could see it. There was a lot of honesty there. There wasn't much coach speak in the conversation that he had, not only with the media, but with Mizzou fans everywhere. Kim Anderson talked about his style, mentioned some of the buzzwords, hard-nosed, tough defense, things like that. He handled it with grace and humility, quite frankly, and I think it was a bit of a breath of fresh air. You didn't get some of that coach speak. You didn't get an impression that this was a guy who was looking at other places for his next job somewhere down the line. I mean, he made it very clear, this is my dream job, and that's what Mizzou's been looking for, at least in terms of somebody who's committed to the program.
And something I mentioned on the big show on Tuesday is the fact that the uniqueness of the day reigned very evident when you looked at the way he interacted with a lot of the administrators and the boosters, the former players. He had members of his family there, old coaches, old teammates. This was a family-type day, and really a day unlike Missouri has seen in their history, because even when Norm Stewart took the job back in 1967, it was on a much smaller scale. Missouri is on a much wider scale right now, and college basketball as a whole is so. This is the first opportunity that they've been able to give a job like this to somebody who went here and played here.
Well, they've had the chance technically before, and they had it in 1999, and even Kim Anderson said at his press conference, he said, I wouldn't have hired me in 1999, but he was also nostalgic and said it's taken me 15 years to get to this point, and he made it very clear that that was the job he wanted. And he also showed a little bit of negative emotion, too. Not negative in the sense of being negative about Mizzou and the program, but about how he really did enjoy it. At least I got the impression. He really enjoyed his time as the head coach of the Mules, and it was bittersweet to leave that program, and he obviously cared a lot for those guys. If you can get him caring about the University of Missouri as much as he cared about the University of Central Missouri, that was evident on Tuesday, I think you'll have a good hire, at least in terms of the passion. You'll never be able to doubt that from this head coach.
I don't think there'll be enough. I think there'll be a lot that he'll put into this program that he put in also at Central Missouri as far as the passion standpoint. You don't necessarily need to, conjure that up, which you might have had to do with somebody who you brought in, whether it was a Marshall or a Howland or a Michael White or somebody of that nature. They were going to have to kind of learn what it's like to be the head coach of the University of Missouri Tigers just from the intricacies standpoint. Kim doesn't have to have that learning experience.
Maybe, maybe not. I think it's maybe a little bit different culture than it was.
Doesn't need to learn Missouri is what I'm saying. He's Missouri through and through is what I'm saying.
No, he knows the state of Missouri, but, the intricacies of any job you learn over time. I still think there will be things that Kim Anderson learns about the University of Missouri and the job and what he needs to do to get the program to an image where he's satisfied with it. But, I think overall that the hire is definitely going to energize people who wanted that link to the past. Mm-hmm. And there were people who made, bones about, well, maybe Mike Alden and Kim Anderson have some sort of beef with each other after the way it went down years ago with Norm leaving. Then Kim doesn't get the job. And I say this, Mike Alden hired Kim Anderson. If he really didn't want him at Mizzou, he could have just said, no thanks, not going to do it. But he talked to him. He apparently, as reports have surfaced, talked to him pretty early in the process, at least via a search firm. And there were other candidates. Of course there were. And there might have been people who could be perceived as a more splashy hire or a more home run hire. But in the end, there are a lot of people feeling good today about Mizzou basketball, and some people who don't. But a lot of people with positive energy about this team that maybe didn't have it in years past. And you have to say for the program as a whole, any positive energy right now is good energy.
What fears of yours did he quell? I know he quelled a lot of mine when it comes down to the fact that he knows what it takes to recruit at this level, at least on paper. We'll see how it looks on the floor. I think he also understands the way that this is going to be a rebuilding deal. He didn't say that specifically, but I think he understands the challenge he's undertaking because he mentioned what it was like trying to struggle with the identity that was at UCM when he got there and what he built there in concert. And I think, too, that a lot of people who maybe did not like this hire at the beginning might have at least changed a bit of their tune from what we saw on Tuesday morning.
Well, I never thought that hiring Kim Anderson would be a bad deal for Missouri. I thought that maybe there were other options out there you had to talk to first. I think maybe in the end we'll find out that Missouri did that. But that being said, in terms of enthusiasm for the job, as we mentioned, his honesty, I keep coming back to a breath of fresh air, Will, because it just felt different. It felt different than Frank Haith. It felt different than Mike Anderson, where you got some of that coach speak, some of the lines now and again. I mean, I don't want to call it aw shucks, but it was definitely relatable to people who maybe didn't know who this man really was and what he meant to a lot of people. You saw that outpouring today, and I mean, that's good mojo and good juju anyway, but in the end, he's going to be judged on wins and losses.
And what will he do with his staff? He did talk to Tim Fuller, he talked to Brian DeBaldi, as well as Toby Lane on that staff, and now we wonder what exactly he'll do with that. Will he retain someone like a Brad Lose, who was on his staff at UCM? Does he bring in a former player? A lot of unanswered questions involving that.
And I don't think you need the former player. A lot of people have mentioned it because it's an interesting choice and would be another bridge to the past. But with what I saw today, I mean, if you want to get your bridge to the past stuff out of the way, I mean, you've got that with Kim Anderson. There were people commenting and saying it sounded like Norm Stewart 2.0 up there, which I know is something that Kim mentioned he doesn't exactly want to be. But he admittedly got a lot of his influence out of his former coach, and he's worked with Norm in those capacities. And I do think, though, that you have to hire the people who are right for your program. I mean, Kim Anderson's being paid the money now. He's the boss. So the boss gets to make the decisions. And if that includes a Tim Fuller, who we know has recruiting ties to Jakeen and Gant and others who you hope would be able to be in the fold for Mizzou going forward because of their highly touted nature, well, you can do everything you want to retain him, but Tim Fuller has an agenda too, and that doesn't mean an axe to grind. It means he wants to be a head coach someday. I think any coach worth his salt would want to be a head coach someday, and he's made comments saying as much that he's examined it. So Tim Fuller will do in the end what he feels is best for him. I give him credit for sticking around the program, but if it doesn't end up being the Tim Fullers and the Brian Tibaldis of the world, it needs to be people that Mizzou fans can get behind, because if you don't give this team your support now, I don't know when you're going to, because I mean, the good feelings about Mizzou are at about an all-time high within the past 5 years compared to where this basketball program has been.
We'll see what steps he takes in order to try and fill out his staff and also the rest of the roster before they take the floor in the fall and winter. Again, more on KTGR.com. You can listen to the full press conference online at KTGR.com and also read my blog. You heard my initial thoughts earlier. I wasn't already sold on it, but I've made my mea culpa, guys. It's okay.
You've made a mea culpa?
A maxima culpa.
Wow.
I've sinned in front of God and everyone, true sons everywhere. And you can read it online at KTGR.com. For Matt Michaels, I'm Will Palaszczuk. Thanks for watching, and listen to us on The Big Show from 4 until 6 on KTGR and KTGR.com.